on this computer. Okay, so I am Sean Burns with Community Ventures. I operate out here at Mustard Seed Hill. I do business development projects. So I help small businesses in this rural area, Bourbon County, over in Cynthiana, Carlisle. I'm just getting started with some of that work. So I try to help people with marketing and technology and those pieces. And then also operate Mustard Seed Hill. I was director of IT at a law firm in 5 cities. We had 50 attorneys, about 100 users. We got hit with crypto virus, and we've had HIPAA concerns and all of that. So I do have a little bit of knowledge about IT. So Nick is a personal friend, and he does some audit work for network security work for Community Ventures. And bringing him in because I think he speaks to normal people very well, doesn't get too nerdy with it. So that's kind of the positioning. And I'll hand off to Nick. Nick, if going to give a brief comment about your company, and then we'll just jump right in.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Good morning. My name's Nick. I have a company called Pelycon Technologies. We're an IT managed services provider. What that means is we're kind of like the IT person you might hire for a company, but there's a lot of businesses out there that might be too small for a full-time person, or they don't want to have just one person. You can't expect one person to handle every IT thing that a company would need. And so that's where a company like ours comes in. We have a whole team of advanced all the way down to kind of entry level. And we are able to handle almost any issue you have, it's a good balance. I've been an IT engineer for about 15 years. I've been in tech support for about 20, for about 5 years before that. And I wouldn't say I've seen it all, but I've been in healthcare. I've been working with legal, everything kind of in between. So I have a good rounded experience with all the different kind of aspects of IT. And let me go ahead and get started here. So the thing I wanted to start is give a little brief about where IT security sort of used to be. And so if you look here, you had like your castle. The castle was basically any server you might have had at your office. Most offices had their important data at the office, and you had to protect it. So you dug like a moat around your castle to keep all the bad guys out. That was a good way to do things. You had a firewall, you kept hackers out, you kept anyone trying to take advantage or steal your information out. And life was good, So about 10, 12 years ago, things started to change. Instead of even keeping your email on site, you would start putting things in the cloud. So instead of having an email server, you had email in the cloud. You had, maybe your file sharing wasn't done anymore on a file server. You would put your files up in OneDrive or Dropbox or one of those services. Those are all cloud services. So a lot of the applications that you used to keep in your office and protected behind your firewall are now out there in the cloud. And you need to draw little moats basically around all of those things. To complicate things more, you've got BYOD, which means bring your own device. That's some companies buy cell phones for their folks. I know we've got somebody here in real estate. This is particularly sort of relevant to you. If you provide phones for your agents, or if your agents use their own phones, either way, you've got company data on a mobile device. If it's their device, you've got 2 aspects. You've got just the general security of their phone, but you've also got to worry about should an agent leave a company, or a person, whether it's sales or anything, if they're leaving a company, are they going to take your data with them? How do you make sure that your data is safe, but also sort of retrievable? So there's 2 aspects to the bring your own device. And obviously telework, we're all, I'm looking at everybody right now. It looks like most of us are working from home. This is probably a good sampling of everybody, right? Some of us have offices we can go to. Most of us work from home. So that makes things a little more complicated when it comes to protecting the important data for a company. So the main risks for every workplace, and this was before COVID, this was before work at home, this was generally speaking, the main risks are, in my opinion, phishing is probably at the top of the list. It's at the top of almost every list. Phishing is that email you might get that says, your bank needs something verified. Please click this link and log into your bank account. Or it's asking for your Office 365 login. Or it might even look like it's coming from your boss, and your boss wants you to go buy some gift cards and send him the codes or something like that. Those are all a little suspicious if you think about it, but that happens all the time. People fall for it all the time. It doesn't mean they're stupid or anything like that. It's easy to fall for this stuff. There's a lot out there. And so, but phishing as a general topic is probably the number one risk and cause of loss. Ransomware is like in a kind of a close second. Ransomware sometimes comes from the phishing. If you click the link or downloaded a program, you might have what ransomware does is it encrypts all the files on your computer. It will scramble them, make them unreadable. That means your Word documents, your Excel spreadsheets, everything. And normally it changes them so that if you try to open them, all it does is show you a message. And it's a ransom note, and that's why it's called ransomware. And it says, give this email address, send this email, 10 Bitcoin or some sort of cryptocurrency.
And the law firm got hit with that twice when I was director of IT. And it looked like a zip file. It was an e-fax email attachment. The founder of this 50-person law firm clicked it, and then it started to replicate across to all of the servers. Shut down the law firm twice.
Yeah, ransomware does not just get to a computer. It's going to look at what else it can reach out to on the network. A good IT person will have something called access-based enumeration, big fancy term, which just means it's a HIPAA rule. It means people should only be able to access what they need to access. You don't just give everybody admin rights, because if somebody who doesn't need access to everything gets ransomware, they're going to scramble everything. They're going to have permission to scramble or encrypt everything if they're hit. Huh. So in the IT world, there's lots of ways to help mitigate these risks and prevent this. There's a lot of ways to recover from it. But the one thing you can't do, we'll mention this now. This is the scary portion of the presentation. So let's keep on the doom and gloom for a moment. If you get ransomware, and everything is scrambled. I've been in a situation where we get called into a company that's had this. Maybe they already have backups, and that's great news. That means you can get your data back. You don't need to worry about the bad guys. You just get your data from the backups. You make sure the network is secure. You get rid of the virus or whatever it was, and you get your data back. Everybody can go back to work, right? That's mostly true. However, your data was still taken from you. Your data was copied to somewhere. You can't really prove it, but you also can't disprove it. It is safe to assume if you get ransomware, the data that was scrambled is also copied to the bad guy's computer. What that means is they're going to sell it. They're going to sell, if they receive some sort of credentials, they're going to sell those. They're going to try and get into your other accounts. They're going to, their work is not even close to done. It's probably just beginning.
That is even if a violation.
Right, exactly. That's why if you were to get ransomware, and unless you can 100% prove nothing was taken off site, even if you recovered from ransomware, unscrambled everything, your data was still copied. Patient data, if it's a medical office, patient data was copied off. You can't undo that. You can't put that toothpaste back in the tube. So that's why you have to alert the media because of HIPAA rules and things like that, even if everything worked out at the end. So that's why being proactive, doing preventative things is key. It's obviously easier to prevent a fire than it is to fight a fire. Sorry. Every once in a while I might say something like the Apple digital assistant. I'm not going to say her name, but if it looks like I'm distracted, it's because there's a robot listening to me and I don't want them to do anything. Sorry to interrupt you or to interrupt myself. The last bullet here, social engineering, identity theft, spear phishing. These are like variants or the result of the first two things. If you get phished, if you have clicked a link or given up your credentials, there's going to be some identity theft in there. Spear phishing is kind of like a calculated attack on somebody. It means the bad person or the bad guy has done their homework and it kind of knows what to ask for. We've had situations where somebody was working with a vendor and the vendor was compromised and asked them to pay a bill to a different location, to wire money to a new place. That's more of a spear phishing because it wasn't just a general prince from Egypt that needs money kind of a thing. It was like they were customizing the thing. Social engineering is when somebody might even call you or even show up at your office and try to gain access. That's more of an old school hacker kind of a term. But social engineering is any way someone's manipulating you based on what they already know about you to get what they want. These are all things that are, these are the main things. It's not necessarily, hackers or things like that. These are the things it's getting at every worker, getting at every staff member. To make matters a little bit worse, this is the last scary slide, I promise, but with COVID or with the work at home, you've got home networks now we're integrating. So any of you who are working from home, is your Wi-Fi secure at home? Do you have other devices on in your house? One of you said you've got a child doing NTI work. How's that device? Is that device secure? Is there no, are there any viruses on that? Those are the questions that come up now when people are working at home. And we'll talk about how to mitigate all those risks and make things a little bit easier. But those are the extra elements now. Those are the extra factors when you think about working from home. I'm at my home now. There's a big handful of devices all checking in online right now. If any of those get compromised, they're potential risks to my business since I've got a business computer here as well. Finally, not to be overlooked here, lack of face-to-face communication is a big deal. If any of you are in accounting or finance, if you're writing checks, if you're in accounts payable, seeing somebody at the water cooler or yelling down the hall that you're going to go ahead and submit that payment, you can't really do that anymore if you're at home and everybody's separate. And sometimes those are the key, like, confirmation steps to making sure, that person be like, wait, what are you talking about? I didn't ask you to pay that. If that could prevent a huge misstep. So just not having just not having face-to-face communication is can kind of wear down on some of these security things that we're trying to put up. So these are the most frequently asked questions. If any of you wants to chime in, Sean, you're kind of emceeing the thing. If anybody has a specific question, I'm happy to kind of field those here. There's only a couple more slides after this, but let me hit the high notes here. Can ransomware from home affect a business? So if you're at your house and you're using a home computer or your work computer, but just plugged into the internet at home, can it affect your business? The answer is it depends. It depends on how you're set up. It depends on if you're using a VPN. It depends on if you have antivirus, if you have something on your computer that is looking for that kind of behavior. If you have those things in place, you can prevent that from happening. It is possible, though, if you simply plug in your computer and if the business network is opened up to a degree, yeah, you can reach across the internet and into the file shares or whatever it is, and absolutely ransomware can affect the business.
That's something that I think towards the end we'll circle back around and talk about how to be really proactive with ransomware. My wife got ransomware once just by going on a website and it downloaded, she was on Explorer, and I guess the website had been hacked. Right, and that can happen. Browser,
that's the best way. If you put yourself in the bad guy's shoes, that's the easiest way. Is if you could somehow get a hold of like Facebook and make it so when people go to Facebook, which they assume is a safe place. I mean, you might not assume that anymore, but it's a safe place as far as IT security is concerned. If you can somehow get into their computer from there, you've got basically a Trojan horse scenario there. Other devices at home, if your kids are using tablets, like an Xbox or a PlayStation is basically a gaming PC, a big gaming computer. Those are just computers. They're all online. Those all make your footprint, so to speak, bigger, or your attack space bigger. Those are the terms used when you're talking about IT security. Like, what is the attack space? What is the attack footprint, or things like that? How many ways in are there? So again, we'll go into how to kind of fix those issues or mitigate some of those risks. The third thing: do I need more bandwidth or a new firewall from your house? Excuse me. The question is most likely not, or the answer, I'm sorry, is most likely not. I can't obviously generally say that yes or no. If you live within the city limits of Lexington, if you're using Spectrum or Metronet, you probably have plenty of bandwidth. You probably have something like 100 megabits per second or more. Those speeds you hear about is normally a download speed. There's a second number that is your upload speed. But both of those numbers, we all used to get by on 10 or 20 megabits per second, not that long ago, 10, 10 years ago. Now we're in the hundreds. And for the most part, I will say everybody has plenty of bandwidth from their house. If you live way out in the country, things might be a little bit different. If you have satellite internet, things are a little slower, but I've never really heard of a household that doesn't have sort of the capability of working from home. That's usually not something anybody has to worry about. A business connection usually means it's more reliable. It means you have better support, but it is the same internet that you get at the house.
And you would never put, when my mom worked for United Healthcare, she had her own dedicated connection with United. So they gave her like Roadrunner and a different modem. And would you ever segregate those two, or you can just like have a personal broadband connection, Spectrum for your work, and then Windstream for your kids, iPad and all that? Or that's just overkill at this day and time, probably.
That's kind of overkill. That's a way a really big company might just throw money at a situation and make it easy. Because even though, so think about your neighbor's house. They might have Spectrum, you might have Spectrum, but your printer and your computer can't talk to their printer or their computer. They're on different networks, even though they're really only one hop away as far as like the giant tree of the World Wide Web goes. That would be what you're creating if you have two internet connections in your house.
You're going to tell us firewall, just a smart, and these users here, I mean, we might not know firewall exactly how to set it up, but that's what we should be telling our IT person, right?
Yeah.
I'll shut up now.
No, that's okay. The way I'm kind of gearing all this is for both staff members of a company, but also probably more like managers or business owners. And some of these things, you're right, Sean, can only be done, not can't only be done, but should only be done by sort of a qualified IT professional. Now that's a lot of us. I mean, that's you, Sean, that's me. Some of the other folks here who I don't know as well, but if you've, you could conceivably buy, there's a lot of routers or firewalls available on Amazon, and they're relatively simple to set up. Even out of the box, they're assuming you want some degree of security, so they provide it. But we'll get into the details here. But yeah, these are the cybersecurity tips basically for everyone. Like I said, some of this has applied for years before COVID, before work at home. But communicating in multiple ways when you're discussing important things. So this is geared more towards, like I said before, accounts payable people, accounts receivable people, anybody you're involving in finance. I kind of touched on the story earlier, but we work for a construction company who we met because they had been what they thought was compromised by like a phishing campaign. They owed about $500,000 to a vendor for whatever asphalt and all this other material they use for their work. They got an email from that vendor in Chicago that said, we are changing the way we receive payments. We now get it via wire transfer. Here is the information. Please pay this invoice that way. Well, that's what they did. So they wired $500,000 to a it turns out they don't know where. But later the company called them and said, where's our money? And they said, we wired it to you. And that's when everybody had a big gasp and, oh no. Well, the accounts receivable person had been compromised. They had somehow lost access to their email, and someone else was accessing their email. They read through their email and saw that they had invoices outstanding. And so they reached out to my future client at the time and said, and did this like kind of spear phishing. So this is where, every company's different, but if you're going to spend that much money, maybe call them up and say, just to confirm, we're going to transfer that money to your new account. They would have said, what are you talking about? And it would have been prevented. So
because that email came from like Amy Williams, who they had a relationship with.
Right.
The email came and then said, hey, don't pay us this way, pay us that way.
Yeah, it was really from the real person. It's just that somebody else wrote it. It was like an impersonation kind of a thing.
Spoof email. Yeah.
Exactly. So this is, obviously the most low-tech way to avoid some of these problems, but don't lose your communication, like, face-to-face, so to speak, or verbally, because you can prevent some of these ID problems just that way. Segregate your work device from other home devices. I'll show you how to do that a little bit later. Not really show you, but we'll go into it a little bit deeper. But this is what John and I were just talking about. If you are going to work from home, you can take a router, a second router, even if you have one at your house already, and you use a router or a firewall to carve out some of the network at your house for business computers. And so when you do that, it is the same thing as, like I said before, like your neighbor having a different internet than you, and your computers can't talk to each other. It would be the same thing, but in your house. And so you really are just segregating out part of your network, and your Xbox, your kid's tablet, your spouse's laptop can't get to your work computer if you do that, even though they're still going out the same tube, so to speak, and they're accessing the same internet. A VPN means a virtual private network. So everybody at our offices, we have a private network. If you go home, you want to keep on accessing that private network. So you need what's called a virtual private network. And what that means is you use your internet at the house to make what they call like a tunnel, a secure tunnel. And it does what we just said. It carves out your home internet and it connects it to the business network. So if you still have servers at the house or at the office, you have important things you need to access at the office. This is a safe and secure way to do it without anyone knowing what you're doing, without anybody spying on you or being able to access that as well. The last thing here is suspicious. Be suspicious of the way I write it here is basically every email you get. You know, every email that asks for money, asks for a login, has an attachment or links. So what did I just describe? About 96% of emails. But unfortunately, that's the case. It's kind of like you got to be vigilant. My company offers our clients user awareness training, which is sometimes kind of funny or silly videos, but all of them are aimed to train people on what to look for. You're looking for emails that just don't quite pass that smell test. Even if they're from somebody you know and trust, you can't be sure. If someone is asking you to buy something for them, or if someone's asking you to click here to log in. Let me give you a couple examples real quick. Just today, so let me go to my text messages. It's not always an email, by the way. I have a text message here from some number I don't recognize. It says, Nick, we found a parcel from July pending for you. Kindly claim ownership and confirm delivery here. And there's a link here on my phone. So if I click that, bad things will probably happen to my phone. And that is a text message. So the link might not, sometimes viruses don't work on a phone, but they would work on a computer. This was sent as a text message. So I can count on that really harming my phone or compromising it in some way. So, there's one case. We are actually in the process of buying and selling our house and moving. My real estate agent just called me or texted me earlier and said, ADT just offered me $200 for your information. Now that's a little bit more legitimate, but it could not be. It could be anybody. If I know we've got somebody in real estate here, if I really want to get some people's information, I might offer you $200 for your last 50 clients or something like that. It kind of has the disguise of being normal, or at least, ethical, but it might not be.
I'm closing on a house, refinancing on a house. Sorry, Pam. And I got an email the other day that was kind of a Dropbox link, but it was spoofed and it had like closing. I almost clicked on it just because I knew I was in that process, but I stopped because I saw that it was malicious.
Yeah, where the spear phishing comes in is when people know you're moving. They know you're under a lot of stress. You might just be clicking links. They know you're getting a lot of documents sent at you to sign or whatever. There's a lot of there's more room for error when you're under stress, and they take advantage of that. So here's sort of my hit list. This is not comprehensive. There's obviously more you can always do. The trick with security is it's always at odds with basically convenience. One of these things is a major display of that. If you're a manager or a business owner, these are things I would recommend you look into. I can help you look into it. IT companies like mine will provide this service. If you have an IT presence at your company, they should know how to do this, or at least know where to get information on it. Not everybody should know this inside and out, but these are the concepts that if you touch on all these, you will be in a safer place than you were if you didn't. Number one is the user education thing. Training everybody on what to look for, what to avoid when it comes to emails and texts and things like that is huge. I don't care how much money you've spent on the best router, the best firewall, all the antivirus you can think of, none of that matters. There's always a gap. There is always a gap. And it's where we all sit in the chair. It's us clicking a link that we shouldn't click. You can prevent a lot of it, but if you can educate staff and users on what to avoid, that's more valuable than a firewall.
I've hardly ever seen it done. Sounds great. Hardly ever seen it done.
Right. A lot of, we have used a company called KnowBe4. I think they're probably the gold standard. My wife works for the library in Frankfurt. They've used it. It's fantastic. Everybody gets a customized curriculum. If you did click a link on an email that they sent you as a practice, they enroll you in a class to how to specifically not do that again. It is very fun and kind of silly. There's games to play. If you make it like that, they've actually done a good job of making it sort of a palatable training instead of OSHA training and HIPAA training that some of us have had to do where you're just looking at a slideshow like mine here and falling asleep. I'll hit some of these a little more quickly. We're probably getting low on time, but security updates. Okay, security updates is a huge thing. What these are is just like Windows updates. If you're using Windows, Mac updates, if you're Mac OS updates, if you're using a Mac, just simple operating system and application critical security updates. They come out once every week or two with Microsoft. You can set your computer to auto update. You need to make sure it is in fact updating. This is one of the sort of boilerplate services my company provides, but making sure all the devices have the latest stable update is very important because those are the things that get exploited by the bad guys. It's been a few years. One of the big like ransomware outbreaks, I think it was in Britain and in the UK. It was a hospital though. And it was all because one of the computers ran Windows 7 and didn't have the latest updates. And so, I don't know the exact details, but they said if that computer had done all the patches, none of this would have happened. The virus just simply wouldn't have worked. And so that's why there are security updates, is because there's always a give and take between sort of the hacker community or the black hats and then the developers of the software you use. They're always working against each other, basically playing leapfrog.
And making sure your servers are updated too, not just your personal computers. So you might not know.
Servers is almost like, they call that like the honeypot. That's where all the good stuff is. It's also something, not everybody's like logging into a server and seeing the desktop. So sometimes they can get compromised without you even knowing. Backups is incredibly important for many, many reasons. Just for disaster recovery, just in case we have a client that had they work downtown. I don't know if anybody else works downtown, but I think somebody hit a transformer with a car maybe, or I'm not sure, but we had a power outage for like an entire day a few days ago. That caused one of the power strips in someone's office to start smoking, and it's caused some sort of surge. And if that happens, you better hope you've got a backup of whatever's plugged into that surge protector. So just in a simple, what happens if we have a fire situation, you need backups. With ransomware, you don't need to pay the ransom. You don't need to worry about your data being encrypted. You can just go to your backups if you have good recoverable backups. Now, obviously there's that other element I said before where there's a copy of your data out there, but when it just comes to disaster recovery, it is it's the hardest thing I can get clients to spend money on, because it's not, it's basically insurance. How do you get people to buy a lot of insurance? It's hard. You're paying money for things that you hope never ever happen, but you'll be glad you did if you needed it. It's one of those things.
When we got crypto virus, 2 different times, we sent 100 employees home basically, and we were able to recover because we had VMware backup. So from the previous night, and thankfully those backups worked. So yeah. I think there was a police station or something in Atlanta that got crypto virus, and they had to pay a $4 million ransom because they didn't have backups in place. I'm off on that city, but I think it was like backups are your crypto virus recovery.
I have like a separate presentation on just generally speaking what every business should kind of know about IT, every business owner. And one of them is, if somebody asks you who does your backups or where are your backups, you need to have an answer for that. You don't need to know how it's done. You don't even need to know if it's successful, but you need to know you need to have an answer for it. Like, oh yeah, that's Bill over here. Bill does our backups, or I'm in charge of backups, or we pay a company. But it should be sort of embarrassing. You know, I'm trying to shame people into this, I guess, sometimes, but it's like, there's no excuse for not having backups. It's just, it's easy. It's not always free or cheap, but it is extremely important. The next one is MFA, which means multi-factor authentication. If anybody doesn't know what that is, you probably know, you probably do know what it is, where you log into your bank and they have to send you a code, text you a code to your phone. Or if you're like me, you have a little app on your watch that has all your different codes that rotate every minute. I have probably a dozen or more services I log into that need a second form of authentication. So multi-factor authentication. Authentication is your password and something else. You need multiple kinds.
So none of us have as much multi-factor as you, but you would want like your QuickBooks and your Microsoft, like 365, those really core ones, at least to have multi-factor.
Microsoft started turning this on by default. I think you can turn it off, but when you check your email with Microsoft or with Office 365, any bank, anything with finance, it's a good idea to flip it on if you can. It's inconvenient. It's kind of a pain in the neck.
And it's free.
It's free, and it's almost, I hesitate to say it's foolproof, but it is almost a perfect solution to preventing your data from getting, or from someone like stealing your login. Someone could have your password, but they also need your phone. And if they're going to steal your bank, you know, get your bank information. So, you know, if you're going to take away almost nothing else, turn on multi-factor authentication for everything that you can, and live with it for a few weeks. If you just absolutely can't stand it, call me and maybe we'll figure out another way. But it's, like I said, it's less convenient than a lot of other things, but it is almost a foolproof way to get to really lock down that service. A VPN is what I kind of discussed earlier. If you're a business owner, you need to have a router that is capable of this. And you know what we do is actually send folks home with routers. We provide a router for the home worker that is compatible with the router at the office, and so they have a constant, what's called a site-to-site VPN. There's another flavor of VPN where you have to turn it on and off when you want to become secure. And this is what you would do if you're a salesperson. You're going to go to Starbucks and get some work done. You enable your VPN once you're on the Wi-Fi at Starbucks, and the security is established then. The first one I was talking about is like a constant connection between the two. But either way, a VPN is a VPN. It's a secure way to have like remote or satellite offices. Basic IT like hygiene involves passwords. Trying to make every password you need to use different, that's a tall order for even me. NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology's latest sort of recommendation is no longer a hieroglyph and a blood sample and a gang sign or anything like that. It's just a big long passphrase that is, you know, it can be plain English, but it needs to be long. So if you can go 12 characters, you know, make it the chorus line of your favorite song, something like that. But a password manager can help you manage all the passwords across everything. It's a little program that runs in Chrome and on your computer or Firefox or whatever you use. And when you see a login screen, it will fill it in for you. And it'll suggest a new password if it's time to change it. Or if you're registering for a service for the first time, it'll create the password for you. If it's not obvious, the advantage to that is the passwords are big and long and random, and you don't even know them. Nobody knows them. The point is you have one password that unlocks that program. And obviously you want to make sure that one is a really good password, but you let that machine do all the other managing for you. It'll log you into other services. You just remember that one password. And that's why one of the better ones out there is called 1Password. There's one called LastPassword, meaning that's the last password you'll ever need. So
that's what I use. And every time I go on a website, my Chrome browser auto fills, you know, it says, do you want to use this password? And I said, yes, and click. It's free. Yeah. It's easy.
If you happen to live in the whole Apple ecosystem, which I almost do, but I still don't. If you're going to use Safari as your browser and use a phone and a Mac, you know, if you're getting all Apple stuff, they have Face ID, and so does Android. But if you're going to use, you know, they've tied the biometric thing with Face ID to your password manager with Apple. And like I said, you have to sort of buy into all their stuff. But when you want to log into your email, it just looks at you and says, okay, you can go, and you don't even know what the password is. It's got some crazy password. But
I have a question about passwords and password manager. My personal computer is a Mac, and so I know that sometimes when I have to set up an account, it wants to create a password. And so my question, and I was hesitant, I prefer to like know what my password is, and you can't if you're letting the machine pick it, because it doesn't show you all of it. So my question is, if there's a hardware failure, what happens?
Well, if you're using one of those programs like LastPass, for example, it's running on my phone, it's running on this laptop I'm using, and it's in the cloud. It's just like OneDrive, Dropbox. It's kind of the same situation where if your computer is broken or stolen, that information is somewhere else. It is synced up with like a cloud service. And so you can go to, if it's LastPass, you can install LastPass anywhere else and log in, and it'll pull in all those passwords there too. So they're never in just one place.
But on a Mac, it seems that's not using LastPass. I have LastPass at work with my work computers, but for my personal computer, a Mac will like ask if you want it to create a password, or it will try to create a password.
It's using Keychain. Yeah, so they have a thing called Keychain. It's still, let me think. I'd have to verify, but it is also synced across your other Mac devices. You couldn't get to your Keychain password from like a Windows computer. But when I register something on my iPhone and like a new banker, let's say, and I log in with an Apple provided password, if I then go to that website on my MacBook, it will also log me in there. So the password gets moved to the different devices. So it's a similar situation, but you're kind of restricting yourself to the Mac or the Apple world. Now, if you're using LastPass for work, there's nothing, unless you have a policy saying you can't install LastPass somewhere else, you can install LastPass on your Mac at home, and consolidate all your passwords into one place. I have the exact same problem as you. I let my iPhone create lots of things, so I'm kind of living in Apple and LastPass. I try to keep them all synced up together, but I'm very frustrated with passwords. I got to admit, like I have all kinds of problems through my whole buying and selling the house thing. I've logged into my bank every day. Every day I have to reset the password because something didn't sync properly. It's a nightmare. The alternative though is, what if it got stolen? I don't know. I definitely have a lot of sympathy for anybody who is very frustrated with almost any password manager. To me, it's a necessary evil, and it's a thing, the problem using it outweighs the risk of not using it. But if you want my recommendation, you might think about consolidating into LastPass, because it lives perfectly fine on a Mac and on an iPhone. If there's an app for LastPass, and it'll fill in all the forms if you're using your phone too. So you can live in just one password manager that's not married to any specific kind of computer.
We like to hear you talk about your personal pain with IT. That makes it relevant.
I don't think I have more than anybody else, but don't get me started. Yeah,
all right. I like this next one, EDR. I didn't know about EDR.
Yeah, EDR stands for Endpoint Detection and Response. I describe it as antivirus plus, or 2.0, or on steroids, or something like that. Most of us might know what antivirus is. We've had it for decades, or at least 20 years, I'm sure. The basic way I use for analogies with antivirus is think about kids getting into a club, or a bar, whatever you want to call it. Antivirus is like the bouncer that lets in the people to a club. The antivirus has a list it basically has a list of people who are not allowed. It has virus definitions. And if you are on that list, you don't get in the club. So any file or packet or anything from the internet wanting to do something on your computer, the bouncer or the antivirus is checking its list. And if you're on that list, nope, you're blocked, sorry. But if you're not on that list, you get through. And so there's something called zero-day exploits. That's a virus that's so new that the antivirus doesn't even know about it yet, and they get through. And there's other ways files or programs can kind of get past your antivirus. Once they're passed though, more times than not, they get to do what they want, unless they're being really, really kind of, belligerent, so to speak. EDR is the next, it's not the latest thing, but it's what we recommend as a standard. And what it is almost like having security cameras in the club, and you're looking for fights. You're looking for anybody, horsing around like the way they should. The main thing EDR is going to do, the flavor we use, is it's looking for ransomware. Ransomware encrypts all those files. And so EDR, the EDR portion of the antivirus, is looking at your computer, and if tons and tons and tons of files start changing at once, it's going to put a halt to that, and it's going to stop it, because that's not really possible for a human to do. And there's almost no situation where anybody would I want to change all of my files immediately. So that's basically, a flag that, okay, this guy's got ransomware. Let's stop that, and let's put them off to the side and make sure that that program or whatever it is can't run anymore. We team up antivirus with the router. If they're both running the same brand of software like we use, those two things can work together. And so if you're at an office and Sally over there gets ransomware, Sally's computer is going to protect Sally's computer, but it's going to also phone home to the router, and the router is going to see that Sally's got ransomware, and it's going to not let any other computer on the network talk to her computer. And so there's a couple, these mechanisms that are put in place are designed to not just stop the bad stuff from happening, but, what did I see the last time, Sean? It's almost exactly topical like viruses right now with us. Like if for some reason all of us were at an event and we're all social distancing and trying to be careful, but if you could somehow instantly see that one of us has COVID, well, you want that person to be put all by themselves. You want everybody else away from them, and you want to protect both. You want to protect that person, but you also want to protect everybody else. And that's almost a perfect analogy for how this all works. The router will segment off that computer and keep it safe from everybody else, or keep everybody safe from it.
So this would have stopped our COVID outbreak instead of me pulling my hair out for 2 hours trying to figure out where it started. I didn't know who downloaded the payload, and we had to find that user session and stop it. And it was just slowly, replicating these hundreds of thousands of files and locking them up. So that would have stopped it. Really important for HIPAA and all these type of.
Right. Yeah. Some of those mechanisms are things that could get you, could keep you from really having to alert the media and stuff like that. You might be able to prove, oh, no, this computer got it, but it didn't have access to any PHI health information. And it was stopped,
So Pam has, say, 15, 17 agents. Is this an expensive solution, or is this $100 a month or $1,000 a month?
No,
I don't want to take you too far into the weeds, but
yeah, right. No, this is about as expensive as most other kinds of antivirus. When I say most other kinds, I mean, if you look up the top 10 best antiviruses of 2019, let's say, most of the top 5 are going to have some kind of this. Usually it's like the Pro or a Plus, or we use a company called Sophos. They're a good security company. They make hardware. They make firewalls and routers. They make antivirus for the computers, and we buy into a lot of their stuff. So they have Sophos Endpoint Security, which is antivirus, and then they have advanced security with EDR for maybe $1 more or something like that.
So 10-person office. It's gonna cost me $1,000 a year.
No, well, $1,000 a year. Not just for the antivirus. No, you'd be getting a lot more if you were going to spend that much. But if you got a 10-person office, you're talking, I mean, I'm filtering this through what we do. We don't just sell antivirus to people. If you were to use an IT company that's just going to do patching and antivirus, you shouldn't be spending more than 20, 25, 30 bucks a month per computer for that. That would be for a good security plan. That's keeping all the computers running well and protected. Not any other bells and whistles, but that's probably a decent Lexington price, for a lot of the IT companies.
The rest is really interesting. If I'm writing something down on a Post-it note, I'm like, I'd better have EDR at least go down that path as a takeaway. Okay.
Yeah. You'll also get past a lot of that smoke that IT folks blow if you start throwing that term around. It's not like it's a super insider term, but you'll run into, if you see a lot of lone wolf IT folks or just an IT person that was working for his or her own company, If they don't know about EDR, then they're a little behind the curve. And so, you know, it's a good thing. It's here to stay. It's not like a fad or anything like that.
Because I talked so long, we're kind of closing in on the end time now.
Yeah. Okay, sure. The last thing is just called dark web monitoring. This is something, what the dark web is, this is really scary. You go ahead and Google what the dark web is. There's lots of good articles on it. It's basically saying, you know, you can't really get to the dark web from Google. It's websites and servers that are out there that take up a lot of the internet. But this is where a lot of the crime happens on the internet. And this is across the whole globe. This is where crimes are bought and sold and committed. This is where your information, if it's stolen, is sold. And that's the part of the dark web that we worry about. We have a service that you plug in a domain name or someone's email address, and it will search the dark web for that information, for that person's information, if it's for sale. Now, I can't keep it from being for sale, but the point is you're going to see if it is for sale. And if anybody finds, with our service, if our clients' passwords are found, it reports to me. And what we can do is find out where it came from and go to their website, if it's LinkedIn, for example, let's go to my LinkedIn and change your password because your old password is out there and it was sold. And so this is a way to prevent yourself from having big problems with your information being sold. Like I said, it's more of a proactive approach. And the reason this is important is because not all the information that has been breached gets announced. There are some contracts, there are some laws that don't require big companies from announcing a breach for like 6 months or even a year. And so your information could have been breached from, let's say, Dropbox as an example, and you might not know about it for 9 months. So this is a service, dark web monitoring, that would give you a heads up or a leg up on that and let you react to that by changing your information. I believe that is the last slide, yeah. It's a lot of information. We try to stay, you know, with a kind of a hit list in case anybody wants to like take away just some ideas. But if there's any time, Sean, I'll send it over to you, but I'm happy to chat or answer any questions.
Anybody that wants to can jump off, but I'd just fire away with any questions, or Pam or Amy, Brenda.
Nick, this is Pam. I do have a question. So our office, we are basically all cloud-based. Everything that we do is all done in the cloud. So like, do you have any, like what kind of, I know you talked about like the VPN, if we went to Starbucks or working from, you know, a public Wi-Fi, but knowing that we are cloud-based, if we're out working, you know, in the community on a public Wi-Fi, do you have any suggestions as far as precautions there?
Yeah, you are probably not going to need to worry too much about VPNs, because if everything you guys hold dear is already in the cloud, when you look if you look in your browser, if you're at www.dropbox.com, there should be an HTTPS. The S is for secure, and there's usually a little lock. That means you have an encrypted connection to that website. It's not foolproof, but that is in some ways, you know, it's not the same as a VPN, but you wouldn't need a VPN the way it sounds like your business is set up. What I would focus on for you more is like multi-factor. If you guys have stuff in, I keep going to Dropbox because it's popular. Dropbox and Microsoft and whatever else. If you're using, you probably have digital, I don't know if you use like .loop or HelloSign or DocuSign. Those things should all be, make sure your passwords are good. Make sure your passwords are probably rotating every you know, pick your period for 4 months or so, or 6 months even. And if you can do multi-factor authentication with those, that's about as much as you can do. And then that's a lot. When it comes to mobile devices, there is antivirus for a mobile device. I don't use it. We don't sell anybody that really. I wouldn't say it's a bad idea, but it's difficult to recommend like, you know, a mobile antivirus because everything is so intertwined. It's really about accessing those different little clouds out there. You know, you're accessing your files or your client data. I'm kind of rambling. I hope that helps. But for you, I think about multi-factor. With what you're doing, multi-factor authentication is the key.
Okay, definitely. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Anything surrounding email, like email, if you're using Gmail or Microsoft Office Suite, Outlook or whatever.
Yeah. Microsoft has a pretty decent built-in like spam filter, and spam filters aren't what they used to be. Spam filters aren't just preventing you from getting the Prince in Egypt emails. They're also scanning attachments and things like that. That's a really good thing to have. There are lots of third-party spam and security filters you can put kind of in between the world and your email inbox, and it scans it as it comes in. Microsoft does a good job. I can't say I don't know what Google uses, but it's like, okay, I guess is the best way I could describe it. But email security that's one of those things. We use a thing called Mimecast. They do a good job filtering emails, although almost every email filter is a little overzealous sometimes. We get a lot of calls from people who said, I know I got this email. They said they sent it, but it's not in my inbox. And it's because it got flagged somehow. So you have to be careful with spam filters where it kind of harms productivity at the cost of being very secure. Trying to be courteous of everyone's budget and sort of a frustration level. Microsoft spam filter is pretty good. I would focus on user awareness and making sure everyone is really honed in on what to avoid. But if you're going to use a spam filter, you probably need someone to help you manage it. It's not something you just install and turn it on.
Got it. Well, any other questions out there? Or I guess if anyone wants to get a hold of you, Pelycon.com is at the bottom.
Yep, sure is. And I'd be happy to, if anybody has a one-on-one they want to talk to me about anything more specific, I'd be happy to make myself available.
I want you to come over and manage conversations between my wife and I on security and her updating her phone security.
Yeah.
Sean, I want to also say this Women's Business Center of Kentucky sponsor program as well. And I just wanted to say, if people want to get in touch with the Women's Business Center of Kentucky, we have a website, which is wbckentucky.org. We are funded by the Small Business Administration, and we're hosted by Community Ventures. So we're co-sponsoring this type of workshop. So thank you all very much for coming. And thank you, Nick, for the presentation. And thank you, Sean, for putting this together.
Yep. Pam, anything I can ever do for you, I owe you. And then Amy, feel free to touch base anytime. I'm sean.burns@cvky.com or .org. You can always find me on the Community Ventures website too. So if I can assist your business consulting projects.
Will we be able to get a link to this presentation online?
Yep, I'm recording it, and then I will save it and upload it to kind of a private YouTube channel that you'll be able to access with the link.
Okay, great. Looking forward to that. Thanks.
All right. Thank
Great
you all.
And thanks so much for the invite, Sean, and for sharing it very much.
Got it. Well, look forward to more adventures ahead. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
All
everyone.
right.
Thanks, everybody.
Great day.
Okay, you too. Thank you.